Objected that its military capabilities had diminished in remarks made hours after a televised address in which President Trump had claimed overwhelming victories against Tehran's armed forces.
House Speaker Mike Johnson joined with Senate Majority Leader John Thune to announce the House had agreed to back a Senate deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats call the announcement a victory and note this was the proposal they had been pushing for weeks. But the Senate Majority Leader pushes back.
They got zero of the reforms that they were advocating for. In the end, this was all about their left-wing base demanding that no funding be provided.
Officials announcing multiple arrests and charges stemming from a federal investigation into billions of dollars in health care fraud in California. U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, Bill Asaley, says 8 people have been arrested, including medical providers, such as nurses and doctors in Los Angeles County, with 15 individuals charged overall.
Gladwin Gill is a doctor, he's a psychologist. His wife, Miss Gill, is a registered nurse, and they operated what's known as 626 Hospice in Glendale. Interesting enough, they both have a criminal history for tax evasion, and so they're not actually allowed to open up a hospice. So what do? They use their daughter's name to open the hospice.
An attorney believes this week's Supreme Court decision in favor of a Colorado counselor decisively topples Illinois restrictions. Chris Woodward explains.
The Supreme Court ruled against Colorado's ban on talk therapy for minors with unwanted same-sex attractions. Colorado Councilor Kaylee Chow's argued the ban violates her First Amendment rights to discuss things with people that voluntarily come to her for help. The Supreme Court agreed in an 8-1 ruling. Illinois-based attorney John Mogg told AFN that the therapy restrictions in other states are similar, including those in Illinois. Punishments include counselors losing their license.
We haven't looked at all 21 states, but generally the pattern is let's make it impossible for counselors to help people go straight, although there's severe penalties for counselors who won't help people go gay, come out of the closet. If people counselees say, I need help transitioning in my sexual identity from male to female or from heterosexual to homosexual, you got to help them, but you can't help them the other way. And that was the gist of the Supreme Court opinion, and that's why it was an 8-1 vote that the Colorado law was unconstitutional. And that's why all of these laws are going to be subject to challenge in all 21 states.
I'm Chris Woodward.
And stocks recovered most of their earlier losses as volatility returned to Wall Street after 2 days of solid gains. The S&P 500 fell 0.2%, the Dow fell 154 points, and the NASDAQ Composite down 0.3%. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. Thanks for joining me on this Thursday and the day before Good Friday. So we have a lot to celebrate, certainly this weekend. Man, I am a blessed guy. I hope you feel the same way as you just think about if nothing else in your life is going right this weekend, you get to remember the sacrifice that was made for you and for me, undeserved. We did a Passover Seder last night at our campus here at Patriot Academy in Constitution City, Texas, with our scholars, the students that are here with us for a whole year. And one of my previous students, David Hoven, came in and my son Reagan, and they conducted it. It's essentially like a Christian version of the Jewish Seder for Passover, and I'd never done that before. First time I'd done that, and I was in tears half the night. I just got to tell you, it was so powerful, and especially the way these boys set it up, and the things they talked about in terms of how important it is when you go back to, the disaster with Pharaoh and the willingness to put the Israeli people into slavery began with forgetting a Pharaoh that did not know Joseph and did not know the good works that had been done. And you think about our nation right now, and you think about our own situation. You think about Israel now, and then the treatment from the world, and how so much of this begins with forgetting, begins with not knowing our history, not knowing our traditions, and that's why the Jewish people have always impressed me with that. That through all of the persecution, all of the horrible things that have been done, that the traditions have been kept, the faith has been kept, the remembering, and of course God tells us that all through the Bible. Remember the former days, recount this, remember that, set a pillar of stones in place to remember. I mean, it's all through the Bible. It's actually one of the things that led me to the career that I ended up in, is because, I'd been reading the cases of, in law school of all these judges giving their opinions, and in all these opinions they would talk about all of these things in history, and their perception of that led to their ultimate decision, and then of course that impacted all of us, and so I started thinking about how much history mattered, and I wasn't a fan of it. I did not enjoy history growing up. I did not enjoy history in high school or college, and it was really in law school that I started finding a love for that, because of reading those opinions and realizing it was important. And then of course you cannot read through the Bible. If you read through the Bible, you have to start taking seriously your own knowledge of the past. It's commanded. I mean, literally remembering the former days. And so that, of course, made it, move up on my priority list and my, those things that I thought was important. And then, thankfully, someone sent me or gave me, I honestly don't remember who it was. I don't know who introduced me to David Barton. I cannot remember. I'm not remembering the former days. I cannot remember who gave me my first David Barton cassette tape. Now that tells you how old I am, the fact that it was a cassette tape. But it would have been around 95, 96, 97, somewhere in there. I ran for office started running in 97. My first election was in 98. And by then I had my whole, what I called University on Wheels, my box of cassette tapes from David Barton and Wall Builders. And these were the ones back, for those of you that remember back then, America's Godly Heritage, Spirit of the American Revolution, Role of Pastors and Christians in Civil Government, all these cassette tapes. And it opened my eyes to the joy of learning history. Like the stories started coming to life. It was fun, finally, for the first time in my life, to study history, because David's just a master at telling the stories and does it in a biblical way. Like, think about it. The biblical method for teaching history and teaching and remembering the former days is to tell the stories, to recite and go back through over and over and over again those very same amazing stories. They're incredible when you tell it through the eyes of the people that lived it. When you tell the stories of the people, you tell the history through the people, right? Instead of just on this date this happened and on that date that happened, and the boring way that we typically teach history and civics in America today. But David didn't do that. David did it in a way where, I was learning about Patrick Henry. I was learning about, Benjamin Rush and what Jefferson did here and what Adams did there. And I was seeing the room. I mean, like, as he would tell the stories, for instance, of the signing of the Declaration, or the debates in the Continental Congress over whether or not to declare independence, or the Constitutional Convention and the debates over slavery and big state, small state. As he would tell those stories, man, I felt like I was sitting in the room. I felt like I was in Philadelphia in Independence Hall, literally, not even like a fly on the wall, what we would call a disassociated picture or memory, or as you picture a story, you're kind of watching the story happen, up in the corner of the room watching it happen. No, it was an associated, like I'm inside my body looking around the room, sitting in one of the chairs with the founding fathers. Man, that's how I felt as David Barton would tell these stories, and I'm just listening to him in my truck driving all over. I can remember it like it was yesterday, that part. Anyway, that was how I fell in love, and so that's how I felt last night in this Seder. I felt like, man, we're reliving these very, very important moments in history and in the history of God's people, and then learning how we're grafted in and how we're part of that story and how our families now carry on that tradition. And so for me, I'm sitting there at the table. And these young men in their 20s, David Hoven and my son Reagan, as they're telling these stories and they're bringing it to life, and then I'm looking, I'm literally holding my grandchild. So for like the first half of the evening, I was holding my new baby girl granddaughter, and it just all hit me. It was just like I'm thinking about the Passover, the actual first Passover, and I'm thinking about the traditions and it all being passed down generation after generation after generation. And then I'm sitting there with my granddaughter and thinking about her being raised up in those traditions and her dad being the one right there teaching these things to us. And friends, I just got to tell you, man, it was overwhelming. I was just overcome with emotion and had a renewed passion and interest in teaching the stories and telling the history, remembering the former days. So if I repeat some of the things that I say often, that's why I'm. If I tell stories that I've told before on the air, if you're a longtime listener and you're like, Rick, you already told that story, man, it's because that's what we're supposed to do. And because there are new listeners, and often many of us need to hear the stories over and over again. I can't tell you how many times when I'm doing radio with David and Tim Barton, David will tell a story that I've heard 100 times, but it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. It's like a renewed love of that story and the principle that comes out of that story, or a love of God and a thankfulness to Him for what He did in that story, the grace or the compassion or the renewal or the redemption or whatever it is that's coming out of that story. We need to hear it over and over and over again because it makes us thankful and it makes us have a heart of gratitude for what we've been given and what we have stewardship over. I think, honestly, if you look at the country right now and you look at the way we're torn apart and you look at how we're fighting each other and how some people just seem to have no concept of how blessed they are to be in this country and to have the freedom to even say the insane things that they're saying, it's because they don't know. It's because they have not remembered the former days. They have not been taught where we came from and how troubled the road was. If you think about most people in America today, we are spoiled rotten. We have it so good and we've had it so easy. The reason that some of these people can, protest and show up at a No Kings rally is because we haven't had a king. They're able to go out there and protest and do their rally because of our system. So they're protesting the very system that has given them the freedom to protest that system. I mean, it's laughable, and to keep from crying at the ignorance of our people. So because we've had it so good for so long, and we've gotten so fat and happy and lazy and spoiled, we now have no gratitude. Meaning, we as a race, as a people, as a country, there's no gratitude. When you have gratitude, it's really hard to be depressed or angry or I started saying grateful, but that's obvious. If you're not grateful, you're ungrateful. But it's like when you're grateful, because you're telling the stories, because you're remembering the former days, because you're walking through all the things we talked about last night, just the horror and the terrible things and the bitter things, but then the redemption and you're remembering just how blessed you are. Man, when you do that, you're forced to look at your neighbor, regardless of what they disagree with you on, with a sense of compassion and gratitude. You know, we did something really cool last night during this Seder. We did did communion, but we also did washing of feet. And if you've never done that, if you've never had a foot washing ceremony as a part of your communion ceremony, or just as a special way of serving your brothers and sisters in Christ, can I just recommend you do that? Just go read the Gospels, go read where Jesus did that and commanded us to do that. And find, even if it's just your family, do that ceremony. It is powerful, humbling, and it's more humbling to have your feet washed than to wash others' feet. I will say that. Over the decades that we've participated in the ceremony, it's always been that way to me. It's harder. It's much harder to have your feet washed than to wash someone else's feet, and it's a bonding experience. So I guess what I'm trying to say in my first segment today, and then we'll get to headlines when we come back from the break, and certainly your phone calls, 888-589-8840. I'm just trying to say, remember where we've been. Remember what God has done in this nation. Remember what God has done for his people throughout his story. That was intentional. Throughout history, throughout his story, which is what history is. Remember what he's done for us. Remember how blessed you are. Remember how blessed this nation is to have the wealth and the freedom, to have the passion that our nation has, to have all of the things that we have. Remember how blessed we are. Be thankful today. And of course, tomorrow, well, every day, we should be thankful for our Savior, but specifically this weekend, putting an extra emphasis and focus on it. And thank you to President Trump for some of the things that he said last night and last Easter as well, to bring attention from the highest levels to what we celebrate this weekend, to what we remember this weekend. We should be thankful for that as well, that we've been given this respite, that in a nation that has done everything it can to reject God, to forget God, to remove these stories from our history, to not teach them to our kids. In a nation where that has happened over the last 50, 60 years, be thankful that we have a president who is bringing us back to those stories, that we have people that are speaking into his ear these stories, that frankly we at Wall Builders and Patriot Academy and American Family Association have been given a seat at the table to bring attention to these stories. It's a great time to be alive, folks. Be thankful. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
Therefore, as you received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The verses from Colossians I just quoted are immediately followed by, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. The delusion and deception of humanistic philosophy require its prey to become bitter, entitled, and unthankful. To remain impervious to deception, we must abound in thanksgiving to God. Thanksgiving empowers us to reject the captivity of today's grievance culture.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Abraham, here's a very important update on the effort between AFR and Bible League to bless 4,000 waiting believers this Easter all around the world who have been denied God's Word, and that includes a senior saint in Tanzania.
The area where she was at, she had never seen a printed Bible study or even a Bible until she was in retirement age and received her very first Bible as a result of the generosity of donors. What an incredible gift to her, to that village.
Bibleless believers all over the world are yearning to read the precious resurrection story. Listen, if you love your Bible, if God has used His Word to grow you, give that privilege to others. This Easter, AFR and Bible League want to bless 4,000 waiting believers. You've done it for 1,000, 3,000 to go. So at $5 a Bible, $100 since $20. Will you call 800-YES-WORD? 800-YES-WORD. That's 800-YES-WORD. Or give it sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
Hello, folks. Tim Wildmon here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, our spiritual heritage tours this year are filling up. And so we've got 3 available tours, actually 5 technically tours available for you to consider on this 250th anniversary of the birthday of the United States of America. We've got tours of Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. And then we've got tours of Washington, D.C. and George Washington's Mount Vernon. Now, those tours are both in June and September, and they're back-to-back. So if you want to come join us in D.C., we'll take care of you for the whole week, and you can see the whole shebang that I've just described, Williamsburg and Washington, D.C. And then in September, there's a tour of Boston, Massachusetts, and all the history there. So for more information on any of these tours, and as I said, they're filling up, go to wildmongroup.com, WILDMON group.com.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
We're back here on At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me. Phone number is 888-589-8840. I would love to hear from any of you that do a Passover Seder of some kind. Like if that's a tradition in your family or your church. I know there are a lot of, or I don't know, I'm learning that there are a lot of, I guess the term is Messianic Christian churches where they do that. It's kind of new to me. So anyway, I'm a little bit not stuck on it, but I really enjoyed last night and told the boys I want to do that every year. And I'd be curious if anybody thinks you're not supposed to do that, or if there's controversy in that. I wouldn't think so. I would think it would be a good tradition to have. I can't see any negative from it. It's certainly part of remembering the former days. But you might have some thoughts on that. And in the meantime, while you're dialing in, let's talk about some of the things that happened. Trump's speech last night. I don't know that there was a whole lot in the speech that really changed anything. I guess it's just confirmation that he is comfortable walking away without total regime change. I think we were all kind of hoping, praying that would happen. I think that would be certainly best, but I don't know. I think he's resolved to the point that the idea of actually getting the Iranian people to rise up is not something we can control. And I've said that from day one, actually. The very first day, I said the real question, the fundamental question on whether or not we get true regime change, like a totally new government, and get rid of the Islamicism and the Islamic clerics and all that kind of stuff, is going to be determined by whether or not there's enough fertile soil left after 47 years, enough fertile soil that the seeds of liberty would take hold. And I don't think 4 weeks is enough to know the answer to that question. It's going to take longer. But I think maybe they wanted to see more of an uprising. But like President Trump said, look, when you take to the streets and the guy next to you and the gal next to you on either side is shot in the head and killed, it's kind of hard to stand your ground if you have no weapons, if you have no way to fight. So I don't know. What I don't understand, I will fully admit I'm ignorant on this. So if somebody out there is an expert and wants to call in and help. I don't understand what prevents us from arming them. Like, what prevents us from getting 1 million ARs and AKs and other weapons and ammunition into the hands of the Iranian people? Why are we not doing that, or why are our allies not helping us do that? I don't know. Maybe there are legitimate reasons why that can't be done or hasn't been done. I also said from the beginning, again, I admit foreign policy is not my area of expertise. So out of ignorance, maybe, I said surely the CIA has been in there and on the ground, and we've got, at least Mossad, I would think, would be able to have the intel on that, and that both leaders and fighters identified prior to even taking the steps that we did. But again, I'm not in the room, so I don't know. All right, let's go back to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's see. How about Mary in Tennessee has a comment on doing a Seder? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I actually had a couple of comments. One was on your wall builders stuff, which I really find to be helpful. I recently found it. My friend turned me on to Dave Barton and them, and they really have a lot of good stuff. I've actually got their first book in the series. And also the Seder thing, we actually did that. Our church actually did that. It was kind of neat to celebrate that and see what that all about and stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, was it for you? Was it like it was for me, where it was like, wow, I feel like I've now been more tied into 3,500 years of history than I ever have. I don't know. It just felt like, I've studied those things, heard those stories, but now, at least the way these guys did it last night, it just connected a lot of the dots for me. How about you?
Yeah, I'd actually experienced the foot washing thing, too, which you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
We actually had that one time, and I was on the receiving end. I had never had that before, and I was kind of hesitant because I don't usually let anybody near my feet at all.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a profound and a moving experience, too, just like, quite. Both those were quite experiences. And you learned a lot through the process that you didn't know before. It kind of wasn't just like about reading about it, but actually experiencing it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thanks for calling in. Really appreciate it. I felt the same way for sure. Let's go to, and by the way, quick headline, just noticed Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General. I guess that just happened this morning, and I had not seen that yet. Will be, according to Epic Times, Trump says Pam Bondi is out as his Attorney General. Bondi will be replaced by her deputy, Todd Blanche, who will serve as acting Attorney General. Extremely interesting. Let's see. He said, called Bondi a great American patriot and loyal friend. Said her deputy will temporarily serve as acting Attorney General. We love Pam, and she will be transitioning to a much needed. I wish I could do a good Trump impersonation because I would read this that way if I could. But we love Pam, and she will be transitioning as I can't do it. And transitioning to a much needed and important new job in the private sector to be announced at a date in the near future. Interesting. What in the world would that be? Pam did a tremendous job overseeing a massive crackdown on crime across our country, with murders plummeting to their lowest since 1900. Blanche also praised Bondi, saying she led the Department of Justice with strength and conviction, and I'm grateful for her friendship and leadership. Blanche thanked Trump for the trust and opportunity to serve as acting Attorney General. We will continue back in the blue, enforcing the law and doing everything in our power to keep America safe. You know what I want to hear, Blanche, or Trump, anybody that's listening? What I want to hear is we're redoubling our efforts to go after the political figures that have broken the law, broken the Constitution, and deserve to be put behind bars. And that we're going to, you're going to see new indictments soon. That's what I'd love to see. So come on, DOJ, let's go. Now the question will be, if Todd Blanche is the acting Attorney General, who is Trump thinking for the next Attorney General? Will he wait until May 26th to see if Ken Paxton wins the Senate race against John Cornyn? And if John Cornyn wins the primary, which I pray does not happen, but if he does, I would think Ken Paxton would be the next choice to be the Attorney General. If Paxton wins, what would you do if you were Paxton at that point? If President Trump calls you and says, all right, your choice, you could be a U.S. Attorney General for the next 2.5 years, or you can be a U.S. Senator for the next 6 years. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, we live in interesting times, folks. Okay, let's go to Stacy over in Louisiana. Stacy, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Blessed and highly favored. Way better than I deserve, for sure.
There you go. Well, I just wanted to tell you that years ago, because you said you wanted someone to call in about the Passover Seder.
Yeah.
And we went to one years ago, friend, to what would be considered a Christian Passover Seder. It was pretty complete, as I recall. I've been to another one at a different church, but my wife and I, what we do now is we actually go to one of the Jewish temples and go to Passover.
Oh, that would be cool.
With the Jews. That I would recommend that for everyone who is interested. I mean, do it anyway. Jesus said, "When you do this, remember me." Right?
Yeah.
And it was a Passover they were having. So if we want to know what it was really like, and we're welcome. Everyone's welcome to go to the temple and celebrate Passover with them. And so we've done this for several years, and it will bring a greater, a broader, and a deeper understanding of what was typically called the Lord's Supper by going and seeing this is what it was, this is how they do it. And it's pretty cool.
I love that.
I really recommend it.
I didn't realize that. I've watched online Dennis Prager do a Passover Seder before. That was a couple of years ago when that was the first time I'd really became super interested in this. But man, I didn't even realize that was kind of an open invitation. I want to do that. Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, let's go to James in Oklahoma. James, go ahead, man.
All right. Thank you for having me. I go to a Messianic congregation.
There we go.
Started out as a non-denomination. We started out as non-denomination, and then we transitioned into Messianic. But we've been doing the Passover Seder since the early 80s.
Wow.
And so now we're in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which I make my own.
James, tell me real quick, so what would be the elevator pitch, 30-second version of what is a Messianic congregation? Like, does that just mean that you purposely observe a lot of the Jewish traditions and holidays? Is that the only real difference? Like, there's not a doctrinal difference, is there?
Well, we believe that Jesus Christ, the Messiah, came and died and rose from the grave. But we observe God's feasts and festivals that God told us to, commanded us to observe. But even though, we still believe that Yeshua is what his Hebrew name is. That's what we call him, Yeshua. Yeah. And we do the Havdalah service every Saturday.
So the ceremonial law, basically, that you observe a lot of the ceremonies and but then obviously still believe the Messiah has come and Jesus is him, and
yes,
so
yes.
Interesting.
We believe that you got to receive Yeshua the Messiah as a Savior.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Have you? And maybe your bubble's different than mine, so it might not seem any different to you. But I've noticed a lot of more evangelicals say Yeshua now. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the rules of language, when you go from one language to another, when you come across personal pronouns, which is name of people, places, you transliterate the sound.
Yeah.
And so,
hey, James, what part of Oklahoma are you in?
Matter of fact, I live in Blanchard, but the congregation I go to is in Oklahoma City.
Okay. Well, man, I appreciate you calling in. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question not related.
Yeah. Sure, go ahead.
I went to a state fair last September, and here in Oklahoma, they're wanting to allow the non-party, if you're not I can't think of the name, an independent, to vote in Democrat and Republican elections. Me personally, I am not in favor of it, but I cannot think of something intelligent to tell people that's not a good idea.
So let me just make sure I understood you right, because some states allow basically open primaries, like Texas, which you don't have to be a registered Republican or Democrat, so you do get a lot of Democrats coming over voting in the Republican primaries because we've become such a Republican state. They want to influence who our candidates are. How is it in Oklahoma? You currently allow for that, or you don't, and some people want to allow for it?
They do not allow independents to vote for Democrat or Republican.
Okay, so you do have to be registered in that party to vote in that party's primary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing I like is we have to show an ID when we vote. I love that.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that for sure. And I didn't used to feel real strongly one way or the other on this one, but I do now. I think having a closed primary is the way to go. I think having to be a registered Republican or Democrat so that you don't end up with we're dealing with it in our local county right now, and certainly in statewide races in Texas. But you don't let the Democrats influence and choose the Republican nominee any more than you should let the Republicans influence and choose the Democrat nominee. And so I think I'm trying to remember now if that's a state legislative solution or if they set it, or does each party get to decide?
Well, if I remember right, this coming November, we vote to decide whether independent can vote in Republican or Democrat.
So they maybe put it on the ballot for you guys. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, they're going to put it on the ballot.
Well, James, I'll tell you, man, Oklahoma does it better than most states. Y'all have become maybe the most conservative state in the country. Arkansas is giving you a run for your money, but you have a pretty good legislature, and then they've done I have a lot of friends in the House and the Senate up there, and they've done a phenomenal job. So you're blessed. And if they do that in November, I think that will make it even stronger. So I think that's a good direction for you guys to be going. Let's see. Amy in Tennessee, let's try it. We may have to go to break before we get her done, but go for it.
Hey, Rick. I just wanted to comment about the Seder Passover last night.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was my second time doing it last night. I attend a non-denominational church called The Gathering, and our preacher and his wife, they are heavy on being sure that we know that we are the branches. We were branched into the Jewish faith, and they are very, very good about making sure that we know the traditions. And it was great last night. My 10-year-old daughter, she got to be there with me last year and this year, and it's just a humbling experience. When I was younger, we would do communion, and I always thought that do this in remembrance of me meant, taking communion. I don't know, as a child, obviously it's the wine and the bread, meant the blood and the body. But as a child, I thought, I'll have to take communion. This is in remembrance of him. But it's actually the Passover itself. Remember the Seder meal. Remember the time spent, the last hours, and it's just a precious thing.
It is
to experience that with my youngest daughter. And anyway, I'm glad you got to experience it too.
Well,
it made me smile.
I am so thankful. Amy, the music says I got to go, but now you sound more like you're from Arkansas than Tennessee, and I say that as somebody from Arkansas. Are you from Arkansas, moved to Tennessee? Are you from Tennessee?
No, I'm definitely West Tennessee.
Okay. All right. Close to Arkansas then.
Yeah, close enough. Anyway, I like your show. I listen every day on my mail route. So
Amy, thank you.
I enjoy it.
Thank you. Well, God bless you. Have a wonderful Easter weekend, and thank you for your call. So true, so true. It is a special, special thing. Man. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We got more phone calls and a couple of headlines, especially Tina Peters in Colorado might be getting a new trial, or at least a new sentencing. We're going to see what happens there. You're listening to At the Core.
When you hear this is American Family News. You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net. AFA Stream is a resource for life-changing instruction and information, a source of wholesome entertainment and relaxation, plus access to some of your favorite AFA shows. You can watch a lot of content for free, or you can become a Great Commission partner. Then you'll not only open the door to everything AFA Stream has to offer, you'll get benefits like a subscription to The Stand and some really nice exclusives. Why not get started today? It's easy. Visit stream.afa.net.
Right here you can see this is the outline of her face. Her hand is right here, her arm, and her leg. I was so shocked. I was really happy. I couldn't believe that I have a little child in me.
Preborn offers compassionate, Christ-centered care and free ultrasounds to moms with unplanned pregnancies. And every day, Preborn's network of clinics rescues 200 babies' lives. You can take action and help bring new life to a mother and a baby by sponsoring an ultrasound to introduce her to the life growing inside of her.
I'm going to keep my baby, and I'm going to be a great mom.
One ultrasound is just $28. $140 will help to rescue 5 babies. And when you donate monthly, you'll receive stories and pictures of babies you helped to save. To donate securely, just call pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or go to preborn.com/AFR.
Hi, this is Jim Scudder with today's Moment in Grace. Fairy tales and TV love the leader as servant idea, but Jesus lived it. In John 13, after supper, he wrapped a towel around himself, took a basin, and washed the disciples' dusty feet. Work they should have done for him. Humility teaches us how to treat one another. Peter protested, but Jesus explained the one who is washed is clean, yet still needs his feet washed. Salvation cleanses us completely when we trust Christ. But as we walk through a dirty world, we stumble and need daily confession. So keep short accounts with God. Come to him in prayer, and he will forgive and cleanse you, just as 1 John 1:9 promises. For daily devotionals delivered straight to your email, go to ingraceradio.com.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me. Last segment today. Got a few more phone calls to get to, and then this Tina Peters thing. So this is, by the way, one of the greatest injustices in our country. You go back to 2020, put yourself in the shoes of the people that were discovering fraud, that were dealing with all the shenanigans, that just wanted to speak out, and the injustices that were committed in 2021 by the Biden administration, by the DOJ, and by some of these local DAs. And just as an example, John Eastman, the attorney, that for simply giving a constitutional opinion, simply giving to President Trump the same advice I would have been given. In fact, saying the exact same thing I was saying on the air all over the country with regard to how the 12th Amendment works, how you walk through these processes, how do you challenge electors that might have been chosen based on an unconstitutional method. I mean, all of that was literally just, John Eastman's one of the greatest legal minds in the country. And they did everything they could to destroy the man, to destroy his career, to put him behind bars for simply giving a legal opinion. That is communist all the way. And to the fact we let that happen, and it was thousands of people treated the same way, but he was just one of the biggest names. The electors up in Michigan and I think Minnesota and a couple of the other states, where they did exactly what they were supposed to do under the law and under precedent by having 2 slates of electors and having them ready to go, depending on what was decided by Congress with regard to whose electors they were going to count, based on the fact that these states had, in fact, violated the Constitution by changing election law without the state legislature involved, which is the only way you can do that. And then Tina Peters dealing with, obvious problems and shenanigans and fraud. And for simply saying so, for simply speaking out about these things and giving her professional opinion on that, the woman has been behind bars for 4 years now? This is insane. And she's been in solitary confinement. She's been abused. It's one of the greatest travesties that came out of the leftist takeover of our country in 2020. And, thank God for Victor Marks running in Colorado and bringing attention to this. And Lord willing, will be the next governor of Colorado and be able to set her free if unfortunately, this, wimp of a governor that they've got does not do the right thing. And so let's see. Here's the headline. It says, It says Colorado Appeals Court orders new sentencing. Okay, so it's not going to be a new trial. Orders new sentencing for former county clerk convicted in election case. The court said the judge improperly punished Tina Peters for her insistence that there was fraud in the 2020 election. I'm shocked by the headline. I want to read a little further here. So a Colorado appeals court? Folks, Colorado, the justice system in Colorado is a joke. These justices are not justices. They're legislators. They act like legislators. What they did to Jack Phillips and so many bad cases coming out of Colorado that took federal action to reverse it. Let's see what happened here. An appeals court has reversed the sentence of a woman convicted of lying to Colorado state officials about a tech specialist she brought in to observe changes to election software. The Colorado Court of Appeals upheld her conviction and said she is ineligible for a pardon by President Donald Trump. Now, that's because there's a state conviction, a state, all done under state statutes. The president can only pardon on federal. Let's see. However, it ruled that she was improperly sentenced and sent the case back to state court for resentencing. Okay, so they're basically saying, yes, her conviction should hold based on what they saw, which had to be a joke. But anyway, but they think that the trial courts, here's what it says. Here are the trial courts' comments about Peters' belief in the existence of 2020 election fraud went beyond relevant considerations for her sentencing. Her offense was not her belief, however misguided the trial court deemed it to be. In the existence of such election fraud, it was her deceitful actions in her attempt to gather evidence of such fraud. Wow, that's loaded as it is, right? She was doing her job in investigating the fraud or investigating, depending on your perspective, investigating whether or not fraud existed. That was her job. She should have been doing that. In 2021, Mesa County Clerk and Recorder Tina Peters told colleagues that Gerald Wood was a government employee and obtained security credentials for him to witness the update. She then passed those credentials to Conan Hayes, who made a copy of the election software server before and after the update. Data from those copies, including passwords for election machines, were later posted on the internet, prompting an investigation. Excuse me. Peters was convicted of charges including 3 counts of attempt to influence a public servant and 1 count each of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, violation of duty, first-degree official misconduct. Peters, now 70, was sentenced to 9 years in the state penitentiary. The appeals court said the length of the sentence was influenced by her insistence that fraud occurred in the 2020 election. This was a violation of her First Amendment rights, the court found. So even a Looney Tunes Court of Appeals in Colorado said that the First Amendment had been violated here because she was not allowed to express her opinion about what had happened. Wow. Jared Polis, come on. The governor of Colorado, come on. Get it done. She should be pardoned at the state level. Enough is enough. I mean, even if you think she was wrong, frankly, even if you think she did everything that the district court said she did and the Court of Appeals believes that she did in terms of apparently giving access to someone that wasn't a county employee or what, I don't know the details. I don't know how you deem those things. You know, I certainly don't trust the justice system of Colorado that this was their finding. But even if all of that is true, enough. Equal justice under the law. Where have you convicted anyone else in Colorado with any kind of election fraud or anything else and had them serve the 4 years or 5 years now that she has served? Enough is enough. Jared Polis should, there was a time when there were statesmen and they would step up and say, regardless of party, I'm going to do the right thing here. And I'm going to try to bring some peace to our state or our country. I'm going to try to bring some reconciliation to our people. I mean, Jared Polis has the opportunity to do that here. He could easily step up and say, look, I'm a Democrat. I think all these people that say the 2020 election was stolen or that there was fraud, I think they're nut jobs. I think they're wrong. I think, if that's what he thinks. I would disagree with that, of course, but if that's what he thinks, he could say that. And then say, and I think what Tina Peters did was wrong. I think she went too far. I think she went outside the scope of her job. I think she was overzealous. I think whatever he thinks, all of which, again, I don't agree with. But he could say that and then say, but she served enough time. She's done enough. And she deserves to go home to her family, 70 years old. And he could help heal the wounds and start to bring the people of Colorado back together. He would help the Democrat Party in so doing. He would help himself, give himself favor among the people by doing such a thing. Think about what President Trump did. In January of 2017, he could have absolutely ordered his DOJ to investigate and prosecute Hillary Clinton for what she did with the emails, all the stuff that people were chanting for a year before in every stadium that was filled, lock her up. He could have done that. And what did he do? He said, I'm not going to do it because I think this is a chance to heal our country. I'm going to show some grace here in the hopes that we can lower the temperature, that we can start to bring our people back together. And how was he rewarded for that? Times 1,000, times 100,000, times 1,000,000 they went after him. What he could have done to Bill and Hillary Clinton. They tried to kill the man. They tried to destroy everything in his business, his family, all of it. So what thanks did he get for showing, a little love, showing a little grace? Maybe that's why Jared Polis is unwilling to do this. Maybe he genuinely believes Republicans would not respond in kind, that there would not be a healing, that there would not be anything, people would not be brought together. How sad. How sad. That's what happens when you project onto other people what you actually are. And the Democrats, unfortunately, are a faithless, godless, entrenched, self-motivated, narcissistic, care only about their own power and self people. And as a result of that, they don't believe that anyone would return or restore or respond with any kindness shown with kindness. So that's why I don't think you've seen them do what President Trump did. Now, you know what? Maybe Mark Twain was right. Maybe Mark Twain was right, and everybody does everything first for themselves. And if that's true, and if that's Jared Polis's worldview, okay, well then do it for you. Do it so that you look good. Get up and give some fluffy speech and be self-aggrandizing and all of that good stuff, but do it. And give this woman some peace and get her out of that prison and get her home. Or be seen as the cold-hearted, implacable, immovable, Democrat that you are, and let Victor Marx come in and save the day in January. And she will endure the next 8 months until then. But, man, it'd be nice to see some grace from a Democrat once in a blue moon. All right, let's go back to the phones. Larry, thanks for hanging on with me, man. Larry in North Carolina. Larry, go for it. You're up next.
Hi, Rick. I'm just calling to give you a shout of praise. Hopefully you'll take it. What you're doing with Patriot Academy, and I am currently facilitating the Biblical Citizenship course at our church. There's so much information. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
It is.
That we took the 8-week course and we made it a 16-week course, and we're only watching a half a video each week because there's so much discussion and so much to be learned there. So shout out to you, sir.
Thank you, brother. Well, I will tell you, man, right up front, that thing was a God thing from the beginning. There were so many times as we were producing Biblical Citizenship that God just moved. I mean, he did things that we couldn't have ever pulled off ourselves. The people that are in it, the bringing in, together of Kirk Cameron and Charlie Kirk and Rabbi Lappin and Jeremy Boring and just all the people that are in it. I mean, that was a God thing for sure. The production, even just the way we threw it together, and God just moved for Rob McCoy to open up his church and to have 2 different events to film that. And then even the topics. I don't know which week you're in, Larry, but when you get to the part on writs of assistance, when David Barton teaches and talks about James Otis from 1761 and the big speech he gave against writs of assistance, and how John Adams would later say that he was at that speech, and that at that speech independence was born and later matured to adolescence, and the Declaration of Independence would happen 16 years later, 15 years later. David teaches on that, and I didn't ask David to teach on that. It wasn't part of what we had planned. It wasn't in the outline. In fact, he didn't even give the speech and the teaching for that week that I had asked him to do, that we'd planned for, that was outlined, because I saw him give this incredible speech on truth and courage several times when we were campaigning in Georgia in November, November, December of 2020 for those U.S. Senate special elections. We did a barnstorming tour. And that's what I wanted him to record for Biblical Citizenship. And we were just finishing Biblical Citizenship, and I said, man, we got to add that. So we created a whole thing, night of production, and he does this thing on writs of assistance. And so I went back and said, all right, we still got to do truth and courage. So that's when we got the second night at Rob McCoy's church. Well, here's where I'm going with all this, Larry, is that you're thanking me for it, but I'm just proving to you that it was all God doing this thing. So a year later, now remember, writs of assistance, who even knows what that is? Nobody is going to pay attention to this in the class. I'm just doing it because it's my buddy David Barton and my mentor and the guy I respect so much. And so we put it in there, and a year later, Mar-a-Lago happens. And the FBI raid Mar-a-Lago and essentially go in with a writ of assistance where they did things that should not be done to any American, let alone to the President of the United States. And that blew up. And in all of our classes, when David teaches on writs of assistance, that's what everybody remembers, is the FBI, at the direction of the Biden DOJ, going off the rails and abusing and ignoring the Bill of Rights and ignoring what Fourth Amendment protections are all supposed to be about. And so I called David, 3 months later, as that has become the hottest topic in all the biblical citizenship classes. And I'm like, David, man, I'm so glad you taught on writs of assistance, even though I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think it was something anybody would pay attention to, and it's become one of the most popular parts of the classes. You know what David Barton said to me? He said, Rick, I taught on writs of assistance. So I'm just telling you, man, it was a God thing. It was that whole course, biblical citizenship. I am absolutely convinced. Honestly, I'll tell you the same thing George Washington said after the Constitutional Convention. If you cannot see the finger of God in it, you must be an infidel. So, Larry, thank you, man. I appreciate the compliment, but I would say to all of our listeners out there, if you haven't been through biblical citizenship, you need to do it. PatriotAcademy.com is where you can go sign up. It's free. Get signed up as a coach. Host that class as Larry's doing in his church, or do it in your living room. We got classes going in Harley-Davidson dealerships, bait and tackle shops, funeral parlors. Not kidding, man. People are using the meeting rooms of funeral. They're happening all over the country. We've had 2 million people go through it. We need 3 million more to go through it before the end of the 250th, which is July 4th, 2027. And you, yes, I mean you, whoever's listening right now, you need to be the catalyst for the restoration of biblical values and constitutional principles in your community. Go to PatriotAcademy.com today, get signed up, and get that biblical citizenship class started. Thanks for listening today, folks. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily